Film Masters brings to Blu-ray two little-seen neo-noir early 60s crime dramas, each on their own disc in a double feature Blu-ray set. First up, we have Door-to-Door Maniac from 1961. This was originally titled 5 Minutes to Live, and there actually used to be a gray market video company that sold things, probably including this movie, that was named after that film. But here we have it as Door-to-Door Maniac, which apparently was a slightly later re-release where they re-edited the film a little bit and added some saucier scenes to make it a little bit more seamy and frank than it originally was. Basically, the deal here is this. This is directed by Bill Karn. Bill Karn features, I'm burying the lead here. It stars Johnny Cash and Vic Tayback. I mean, that alone should make you want to see this film. Johnny Cash, Vic Tayback, a very young Ron Howard, which is kind of cool, and Donald Woods, who I'm watching the movie like, where do I know this guy from? I feel like he was in a Twilight Zone or something. And this movie is shot in black and white. Very much feels like TV of the era. Certain films had that vibe, just the way they were shot, the way they were lit, and the editing pacing. And this movie kind of feels like TV, like it could have been cut down to be an hour-long Alfred Hitchcock Presents or something like that. Donald Woods was the father in the original 13 Ghosts. I had to look it up, and I'm like, of course that's who it is. Anyway, film is presented in DTS HD Master Audio 2.0 Mono and Dolby Digital 2.0 Mono, English SDH subtitles, and subtitles for the commentary, which is pretty cool. And you can watch it two ways. They refer to it as theatrical version or TV version, and it's basically either 4x3 square open matte, which looks fine when I looked at it that way, or 178 to fill your screen, which also looks accurate. So it's not one of those where you watch one version over the other and like the theatrical version feels like people's heads are getting cut off, or the TV version feels like there's just way too much headroom. At least when I spot checked it, it looked actually completely serviceable either way. So Johnny Cash sings the opening theme song title tune called 5 Minutes to Live, and he sings a couple songs in the movie. The theme song plays, under the titles, so it's like, okay, it's Johnny Cash on the soundtrack. And then in the movie, at one point, he breaks out a guitar and starts singing. That seems a little weird. So what's the story about this film, You Fool, You Fool? So the film is narrated by Vic Tayback, who looks back upon the events of the film. Vic Tayback is a mobster who kind of hangs out at a bowling alley, and he wants to pull a bank job. And he's heard that Johnny Cash's character is a really good trigger man, or a good cold-blooded killer, or a good man for the job. And essentially the plot is Johnny Cash will go to the home of the aforementioned Donald Woods, he who has Ron Howard as a son, and hold his wife prisoner. And basically they will blackmail this bank manager into putting a bunch of money in a bag, giving it to Tayback, and it's a very clean, very smooth getaway kind of bank job. If only it went that well. So this film is kind of a mix of things we've seen. It feels like a little bit of a Desperate Hours. It feels like a little bit of some other better known, frankly, better crime movies of their day. But it's not bad. It just kind of sits there. For me, it felt kind of repetitive, like it gears up. And the real problem here is that Johnny Cash at this point was not an actor and was, to me, really not very good in this. And it was distracting. You were looking at somebody who's not an actor trying to be an actor and trying to say the lines, and it just didn't quite work. They make him a real scurrilous character. Like he abuses this woman, he taunts this woman. You really think, in the context of the movie as it's going along, he might just kill this woman for fun, and he might do a lot of other terrible things, which he sort of does over time, which we don't really see. But in this Door-to-Door Maniac version of the film, it gets a bit more, I would never say explicit, but it goes a lot farther to showing you what he's doing to her against her will. And it's material of a frank nature, as they used to say in trailers to get people to go. So Vic Tayback is great. And it's interesting to me to see, this is going to be the only review you watch on YouTube today that talks much in the way of Vic Tayback's acting prowess. The Vic Tayback, he always had this like accent, like a Brooklyn kind of accent, and he doesn't in this movie. And that was the first thing that struck me. I'm like, oh wow, Vic Tayback, like he apparently was always putting that accent on. He just like sounds like a normal, slightly more erudite guy. So it's a very interesting film. It's not great. It's nothing I think I would need to see again. But as a curio, the transfer, because this is how Film Masters does what they do, transfer looks great. And maybe for me, the greatest value in this film, other than just seeing Vic Tayback on the big screen, and knowing about finally getting my knowledge of this Johnny Cash movie. Johnny Cash got better later. He's in a movie with Kirk Douglas called A Gunfight that's really not bad. He did a lot of TV movies in the 80s he seemed to be pretty good in those, but in this, it just didn't quite work for me. The interesting thing for me about this film was the snapshot in time that this film was. Predominantly shot out in the world, so not a lot of sets. The bowling alley they're shooting in pretty clearly is a bowling alley. The house is a studio set, but all the exteriors are just the world as it was in 1961 or so. So it's the cars, it's the clothes, it's the storefronts, it's the signage, it's all the stuff that I feast upon in these older films because it's just a snapshot of what the world looked like, what this neighborhood or this town or this city that they shot it in looks like. So it's an interesting film to watch. I didn't love it, and it doesn't have a lot in the way of extras. You do have the commentary by Daniel Budnick and Rob Kelly, and that gave some insight into the film, and that was interesting. Some background in how the film was released, how it was recut, who were the people behind the film. And you've got the only bonus is a recreated 2024, that's this year as I record this trailer, that's a minute and a half. And that is basically, they took the audio from probably a pretty low quality copy of the trailer and they recut it and recreated the titles using the new transfer. So you get a semblance of what it would look like. Personally, I probably would have preferred just the low quality trailer just because the new recreated trailers always seem a little phony to me, even if they're exactly what the original was, because those recreated titles, and it just, I'm a stickler, what can I say? And who knows how horrendous the quality was that they worked with to get the audio for the voiceover of the trailer. So that's one disc, and I love this too about Film Masters, is that they take these movies that were never really respected, these movies that were public domain eyesores in the bargain bins that always were just beat up, crummy old prints. They find really great source material, and they put out the best version ever of these movies. And if they put out the double feature discs like this one, they put them on separate discs so they can devote as much of the bit rate as possible to the movies looking good. And they don't cram a bunch of stuff like they used to in the DVD days when you were buying these as public domain releases, and they'd fit 2 or 3 movies on a disc and they would look like real player. Disc 2 is a film I'd never heard of. This is called Right Hand of the Devil from 1963. This, as I've learned in this package, was a passion project for a character actor and Hollywood hairdresser, Aram Katcher, who apparently was in a lot of stuff. And what I knew him from, and I was kind of shocked when I realized it, was he plays the Peter Lorre type guy who works for Junkyard Sal in Russ Meyer's Beneath the Valley of the Ultra Vixens. And that's going to mean something to about 11 people out there. But if it does mean something to you, you're going to be like, that guy was in something else? Yes, he was. He wrote, directed, what it says here is art direction, original screen story, produced and directed by Aram Katcher. And he did the hairstyling for it. And he was the star. And it's one of those movies where he makes himself out to be the coolest guy in the world. People are like, who is that man? He's a man of mystery. He's dashing. Women want him. Men want to be him. It's kind of funny. But basic story here again, it feels like even from the trailer or from the poster, it feels like this is going to be supernatural or a horror movie in some way. It really isn't. This is just another crime drama. It is occasionally interestingly shot. Katcher is not great in it. The writing is not great. The storyline feels a lot like, it's mentioned in the extras, it sort of feels like it was inspired by Kubrick's The Killing and a lot of other heist crime noir films of the 50s that had come not too far before this. Basic story is this man of mystery comes into town, assembles a team. The plan is to knock off the vault or the money or the payroll or the cashier or whatever at a sporting arena. I'm not going to tell you the whole story. Katcher, this international man of mystery, decides to woo this sort of middle-aged to older woman who works in the office to try to get an into the office where all the money is held, and things don't exactly go the way he planned. It's not a great movie. It's pretty awkward and kind of campy or cheesy if you watch it now. But you have to admire this guy who was not a Hollywood power player, who had, this mini empire in this really popular hairstyling salon and was getting acting work in film and TV, decided to make a movie all by himself. And apparently the story goes The film did not do very well at all. It was not well received. And he was like, well, if nobody can appreciate this movie, nobody's going to have this movie. And he tried to destroy like every copy of the film. Apparently one survived. So this is almost a lost movie that Film Masters has rescued and put out in a really nice edition. Again, looks great. And again, for me, maybe one of the great values of this film is the actual locations that it shot at in 1962, 1963, Hollywood and LA. It is, again, presented in DTS HD Mastered Audio 2.0 Mono, Dolby Digital 2.0 Mono. It's got a commentary by the Monster Party podcast. They've done other podcasts for Film Masters, and I almost shut it off because I'm not a fan of commentaries that just mock the film. It's like, I want to watch a commentary. I can mock the film myself. Unless it's Mystery Science Theater, I can watch it myself. I can mock it if I want to, but I try to take everything for what it is, and I try to enjoy it on its own terms. And if I find it funny, I find it funny. But a lot of times I find these movies that a lot of people think are cheesy or lame or campy to be entertaining, to be more entertaining than a lot of things that I see in the theater these days. So at first I was bugged by it. They do weave in a lot of information about this film, but they do pretty much make fun of the movie and Katcher and everything all the way through. And I find that tiresome. I find that kind of a waste of a commentary myself. But you may find it interesting and entertaining. It also has English SDH subtitles on the feature and commentary subtitles, which is always a cool, nice, thoughtful touch on the part of Film Masters. This also is presented in 1/7/8 theatrical or TV, as they call it here. I forgot to mention, both of these movies are very short. Door-to-Door Maniac is, I believe, 75 minutes, and Right Hand of the Devil is 67 minutes. So it does not demand a lot of your time. There are a lot of movies I've seen in recent years that I wish could have been just 67 minutes. What else? There are extras on this. We have Player Piano, The Passion of Aram Katcher. It is a video essay by Someone's Favorite Productions. It's 11 minutes long, and it's really cool. It does get into how this movie came about, who Katcher was, what happened to the film and Katcher afterwards. And then you get the original 1963 trailer that's a minute and a half. It features a bunch of footage that is not in the film. There's a lot of footage of a stripper who, let's say, Russ Meyer would have cast at some point in his career. And it offers the period interest people something to make them want to go see this movie, and it ain't in the movie. And but it's interesting to see how that movie sells it as this really edgy, who is this man? What does he want? What is he going to do? As for the horror aspect of the film that's sort of hinted at in some of the stills in the poster, there are like two moments in this film that are like shocking and pretty gruesome. They are surprises. This movie kind of ends with like a, whoa, hey, wow, wait, yeah, where did that come from? So it is worth watching. I think both of these are worth watching. They're just, they're nothing that I love. They're nothing I would probably watch again. But if you're into the kind of movies, then and Something Weird probably did put these out. Something Weird Video used to release, and just under the radar, independent little films that people have forgotten that do in some way represent the era from which they came. I would recommend this double feature disc. Let's take a look at it. So I love how they always use semblances of the original production or the original poster art. So that's the cover. So you get the Door-to-Door Maniac art, and you get the Right Hand of the Devil art, and the back gives you information, and then you crack it open, and we have one film per disc. One film per disc. That's how we do it when we put multiples on a Blu-ray. And then we have a booklet, which is pretty hefty. And there is an essay about each film. And the essays in these Film Masters booklets are always great. You gals are all alike when old Johnny steps on your starter. The Joys of Door-to-Door Maniac by Don Stradley. And that's a very good essay. And then C. Courtney Joyner with The Right Hand to the Right Hand of the Devil, which goes to, it's mostly not about Katcher. It's about, I think, the director or somebody else who worked on the film. But they dig up stuff like this. It's an original newspaper ad for Katcher's hairstyling service with prices, but also says, see him in this new film coming out soon. So man knew how to advertise. So available now on Blu-ray from Film Masters is the double feature disc of Door-to-Door Maniac and The Right Hand of the Devil. Right Hand of the Devil.